Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome co-directors Katie Shanahan and Todd Demong, who joins us to talk about their work on the Twits. Katie and Todd will talk us through what their role on the film entails and the creative decisions that they're involved in. Please be warned that there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Katie and Todd. Hi, Katie and Todd. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
We're here to talk about the Twits that came out last year. How have you guys found the reception to the film?
It's been like I've really enjoyed seeing just the fans that like super enjoy the weirdness of it, like who really get what we're going for. It's really getting it. You know, when you make an adaptation, there's always that kind of like you're not quite sure if you're going to be able to please everyone who's like the original fans of the books, but like a lot of people really enjoyed just the weirdness we were going for and appreciated the folks that did.
Yeah, I'm the same. It was a bit divisive in a lot of ways with a lot of people, but the folks who seemed to get what we got felt like there are people. So how nice! It's like you're finding the folks who you meant to find. So that was
yeah.
I think as well because like the book is so cherished and it's also Roald Dahl, and like I can imagine you're already pushing a massive boulder up a hill, just trying to sort of stick to what like the source material. But then also you don't want to do like I don't want to say shot for shot, but as in terms of like when you're reading stuff in the books, just to do like the exact same thing as a book. You know, you want to do your own thing as well. And I guess as well with books, you can kind of take your interpretation and sort of go with it with whatever you want to do in a way. And I think when you have stuff like where the books are more animated, so if you did something like who's the guy who did Cats in the Hat? Name escapes me now.
Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss, yeah. So because it has such a distinct style, even though the Twits as well, there's pictures in the book, so you can kind of get a visual of how they are. But that's more for as an audience member to be like, this is what hatred does to someone when they, have it in brewing in them for so long, and you're like,
Totally.
it's like he was definitely onto something here.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the interesting things with adapting it, I know that Phil enjoyed and also struggled with, was the fact that the book itself is essentially a series of vignettes and gags and mean things they did to each other, and that there wasn't a real narrative to it, except for I think the last 2 or 3 or 4 like short stories kind of came together to tell the story of their ending, and so because it hadn't been adapted a bunch, Phil had a lot more freedom to kind of add some things to try to create that whole like linear narrative and string things together. So that was an interesting thing that I think we all struggled to keep the spirit of the book alive, as well as kind of adding some things to be able to tell a whole cohesive story.
And using these really great, fun, weird, mean characters and taking that as like a jumping off point of what would this world look like that they live in, and like, what happens when people like that maybe end up in charge? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. I wonder what that's like. If only we could see that in real time, in real life. Sorry, not to get too political here.
No, but you're right though, in terms of how do you see it when somebody's so mean? How can you reflect it? And you say you don't want to get too political, but at the same time, with art, always reflects politics. You look at the sort of geopolitical landscape with films, and I was thinking about this now about certain remakes. Thinking about something like Scarface, for example, where it didn't work at that time, but they used sort of Cuban immigrants coming over to help with their story, and it's always going to be there, even though people say it's not. But that's neither here or there. But what I'm curious to sort of get at as well, because you guys are listed as co-directors, as Phil, who's the director. How does that work in terms of animation and in film? And how do you guys create the workflow between you or amongst yourselves?
I guess to give a little bit of context to just like the journey we've been on as a project of the film, we started off as more of a short event series, so a short episode, like 7-episode series. And then at the time, Netflix had a little bit of some shakeups where some projects changed a bit, and we switched from a series to a film. So at that time, Todd and I were both episode directors, so we'd be directing different episodes, and it was a little bit of a head of story position as well, which is mainly leading the story artist team. So you're working with the story artists, coming up with all the visuals and the acting and the shots and everything. And then when we transitioned to film, suddenly Phil was really great and just bringing us on into everything, bringing us into the voice acting, the editing, the animation, and really just being an incredible leader and mentor to us. But really just giving us a chance to, because it was such a big project that we kind of needed to all be able to help each other divide and conquer a bit. Because Phil also, as the writer director, he'd need to go away and write for a bit, and then Todd and I could help focus on certain meetings he couldn't be in, or just to be another pair of eyes and edit, to be there to give story context for animators and lighting. Yeah, I think it's also Todd is like an incredible action story artist, and he's just like an incredible artist and and so fast too. So it was great that we could also, if we needed to, jump to the side and do some storyboarding as well, if the story team was full up or anyone needed a hand with anything. So I found it was very collaborative, and we're all very much on the same page, the three of us. And it was great just to have Phil's trust to join him along for the ride.
Yeah, I agree, and thank you for the kind words, Katie. Right back at you. Katie said everything perfect. I think the one thing I wanted to add was just the fact that Phil's leadership allowed us to, take on bigger and bigger roles, and empowered us to do so. And the great thing was we all had the same, I don't know how to phrase this properly. He was a great director in that you knew exactly what he wanted, and so it made it easy to get on board. And so we were all on the same page the whole time. So it was easy for us to pick up whatever was needed and shepherd it in the direction we all wanted, which was also what Phil wanted. So so that was what was lovely about it, because not all projects are like that.
I guess as well, like when you have projects like that, when you have so many different people working for you, especially in animation and probably in film as well, it's like how much of a good communicator you need to be regarding ideas, but then also at the same time listening to people and what they bring to the table as well, because it's all well and good saying I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, and people are like, yeah, cool, but that might not be possible, or we just don't have time, money, resources, whatever.
What I always appreciated about Phil, so sorry to interrupt,
no,
but
okay.
he was always very open to, like, he had a very clear vision, but he was always very open to, if someone had a thought for something that would be a little funnier or something a little more heartfelt or just something no one had thought of before, he really wanted to empower people on the team to be able to speak up and just suggest it. And if we had time to try it, we would. And then sometimes some really fun, weird ideas could come out of that. So he was just a very gracious leader for the team, and just not, wanting just us all to have to feel a sense of pride and connection and building this together.
Yeah, but that's just how it is. But I that's how I can imagine all projects being. And I know people will clash because there's ideas, or people unfortunately be like, it's my film, rather than thinking it's like, actually there's 300 other people behind you, pal, that's making you prop this film up.
I think it takes somebody who is very sure and confident in themselves to allow the belief that they don't have all the answers. And that's not often the case. Usually, you get your chance up top and you feel like you have to run the show, but you're not doing it as collaboratively as might benefit the production, whatever it might be. And that was the great thing about Philip, is that, as Katie said, he's open to it. And I really enjoyed watching him take in somebody's suggestion. It's like you could watch his wheels turn as he's putting that idea into his idea of the story. And then so you could see him taking it in, and then you could see him either accept it, go, yeah, that's a great idea, let's try that. Or he'll explain, like, this is what I was going for, and this is why I don't think that quite works. But he would always consider it in a genuine way, which isn't usually. I've found you write in a list of thoughts that I don't even know for sure if they're ever read or considered. So it was really nice.
But I think as well that comes down as a good leader, that you want to take everything in with people, but then also, like, because it's a creative collaborative process, something that's going to spark being like, actually, never would have thought of that, and that's actually a really good idea to sort of jump as like a springboard to jump off on. Or as you said, like, even as like heartfelt moments, because it is a kids film, you need those moments where actually, how can we maybe pepper in an adult joke here that is one for the parents,
For sure.
and kids might not understand it, but adults will laugh straight away. Or how can we incorporate the Twits themselves into what's going on, because it's such an old source material. We want to kind of see if we can bring in all the OGs and other people who might have been there or who had read it for school. And because I know we had to do Roald Dahl for school at one point, so that means something to me as well. So when you're watching it, you're kind of looking and being like, oh yeah, I remember this, I remember that. And I forgot the book was only like 96 pages long.
That's right.
Which is crazy. But what I want to sort of pick up on as well, Katie, what you mentioned earlier regarding before Phil came on and the shake-ups, you guys were creating it as episodic rather than a feature. How did you guys go about at that time start sort of splitting up your work and deciding which episodes to do and what sort of set pieces to do? Or was it a case that somebody had already written it and you Todd would do the even numbers, and then you yourself, Katie, would do the odd numbers?
Yeah, well, Phil was definitely there from the very beginning, way back, and so he brought us on for the pilot episode, and I think at the time we were storyboarding that one. I think, right, Todd? It was a small team, so we were taking.
Sorry, it was interesting because Netflix was going through several different regime changes throughout the process and life of this production. And at the time, I started at Netflix on a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory series that was being headed by Motyka, and Katie was one of the episodic directors on that. And that got turned back into development. So there's all of us story artists who had just started on Charlie. I don't know whether it was just good fortune or kismet or what, but right around that same time, Phil and Meg, Phil's co-writer, had finally finished writing the pilot, and we're ready to start boarding it. And so we were lucky enough to then just be kind of thrust back onto the Twits, and then, yes, like Katie said, started boarding it.
No, perfect. Yeah, and then after the pilot was done, Todd and I were promoted to episode director positions. So I was doing, I think, the even ones, and you were doing the odd episodes. I think
largely it was like that. I think there was one where you had like episode 3 and 4, and then
right,
and I had like 2 and 5 or something. I don't know. It wasn't always exactly even, but we basically split the episodes. And then Phil did the first one, he managed the first one, and then he was going to direct the last one, which we never got to.
But our position at the time was mostly working with the story team. So it would be something where we'd be helping prep people for everything they need. Like before you launch on a sequence, it's like you have your script pages that you work from, but then you need, character designs and backgrounds and props, and then sometimes even just like shot ideas or just really big important key moments. So we would always have the story launch where you'd sit in with Phil and really get exactly what he was going for in a scene, and then just give the story artists as much as they needed to go, and then as they're working, just being there to support them. And then usually we'd have pretty quick turnarounds. I think it'd be about a week. You get a script page and it'd be 1 to 2 weeks when you'd be pitching it. So you'd have your scenes up, and this was during COVID, so everyone was working from home at the time. So it would be much similar to this, where you'd have a screen up and you'd share your boards, and we would just run through the whole episode together. And then, any notes, people would address them, that would go into edit. And then you'd kind of move on to the next episode and just keep them rotating. And then the cool thing again with the collaboration was just all the different departments being really open to helping each other. It was really easy to just, if we needed something from art, they'd be happy to help. I want to shout out to Todd Jansen, our DP head of layout. He came in with like really great ideas on how to use the camera and how to set up a lot of really amazing shots. And he and his team were always really great. If story artists needed to find certain shots or move around the scene, like he'd be great just being able to go into the built scenes and help the artists get as much reference as they needed.
There's a lot of going into this. It feels very different to like a live action film, because it feels like you guys will get your scripts, but you will have an idea of the script, and you think of the character design and also the world design, and then sort of build from there, which was probably similar to a live action, but I can imagine that there's probably not much margin for error in animation compared to live action, because with live action you could kind of move the camera or move someone around this, like a stage, and on a when they're on location as well. But when you're with animation, I can imagine that it's more, we need to be very precise about what we're doing, and also make sure that we get it right, so that if there's changes later on, it's just minor ones, not big ones.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think animation has a lot of wiggle room up to a certain point, and then it's no wiggle room. Like it becomes cost prohibitive to go in and like do reshoots like say a live action film could do. But particularly on our project, I thought we were really nimble with boards and previs with Todd Jansen and his team, where we were able to iterate really quickly. One of the famous sayings, fail quickly, right? So you try something, see it whether it works or not, and then redo it real fast to see what will work. And I thought we were all really good at that. Trying different things, seeing how it's working out, and then moving on if it's not, or just nudging it around if it is.
And I found the animation team at Jellyfish, they were incredible, and they again were very collaborative in coming to us with just really great performance ideas. And there was still time to be able to tweak things there if there was something that felt stronger. Or even just small story tweaks towards the end. Like they were very gracious and very always just like happy to jump on and try and make the best version they could. And their team was incredible, just really amazing artists, really funny, really thoughtful, very talented crew. Again, very grateful for just having an incredible team of awesome people to work with every step of the way.
And when you're working with people like that, because obviously it's their job working in animation, but when you're stepping into a new production company and they have a lot of experience, what is your experience jumping in and working with new people, and how do you integrate into how they work, but then also understanding how you guys work?
With Jellyfish, we had our animation director on our side, Jack Kasperzak, another really awesome guy. He would work closely with the teams there, and then they would bring us, I guess, reels. I'm not sure what the correct term for it is. We get the dailies, I think would be the term for it. And then it would be, Phil going in, giving initial thoughts. I think the thing I always looked for most was clarity. Like if the point of a scene was, you know, one character's emotional change, it's just, are we reading that, or are we maybe distracted by something? So that's something I was always focused on. I mean, they nailed it like so much of the time. And that it was, I think, really great that you could come in and just look for ways to plus stuff, because they'd already come in with such strong performances and such very thoughtful acting choices. Yeah, that was just really incredible to see what they would do. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, no, I guess I look more into how they're doing stuff and how they're sort of bringing your vision to life in a way, but then also the workings of like who you'll be talking to, so then how they'll communicate what you're doing to then pass it on, and how I think again it's interesting because there's so many different layers to it compared to live action. I know I keep comparing to it, and I shouldn't compare it because it's like orange and apples, but it's more as like a, in my mind, sort of processing it and seeing the two different sides of it. But then also I feel like, as you said, like you kind of have changes until you can't make any changes, because that's probably like the first draft of what you're doing to then like the second draft, for example. Well, I guess like there's a first draft and then there's final draft. There's no so I should change it like that. And
I was just going to say, I think anytime we had to really nail something, and I'm trying to think of an example, and maybe you can help me with this, Todd, but I feel like anytime there was a performance thing that we really needed to hit, like Bill would sometimes just film himself doing it, and then show that to the animators as an example. I'm trying to remember exact examples, but I remember sometimes just videos of like, sometimes like Mrs. Twit moves, or just like, I think one, we had a really great dance choreographer, why can't I say that? Dance choreographer working with us. And she would do just really incredible dance moves for the Twits. And that was something that could help Jellyfish, just like something like this. Like this is maybe the way she moves. She's kind of like Mrs. Twits, kind of like, you know, that triangle shape, kind of heavier inner movement. Mr. Twit, for being so round, that was oddly light on his feet. So it was cool seeing her give those samples to the team.
Yeah, shout out to Carissa Barton, who did a phenomenal job.
So great.
Choreographing the dance stuff in there. It doesn't see. Yeah, it was great. It was wonderful to see that kind of stuff come to life as we were trying to figure out. It took us a while to realize we needed a choreographer, because the idea initially was that they're not dancers, so like, well then we don't need to figure this out like that. But as we moved into layout and animation, it was like we weren't getting the performances we wanted, and it was like, well, we do need like the you know, a real kind of eye-opening learning experience for me is that like this kind of movement absolutely requires a choreographer, and how stupid of us to think otherwise.
But do you find that as well, because it's animation, you probably don't, you can kind of play with how people move, and you know, if somebody, it's going to sound really bad, but like, you don't need to worry so much about health and safety of actors, knowing that whoever you're animating can have like bad posture, for example, or that where they might dance would be horrendous, and you don't need to worry about them hurting anybody when they like try to like a windmill around and all of that.
Totally, yeah.
But then it's funny when you pick up the point of how we need to show how we're going to move, and how can we actually, none of us are dancers, or might not be good at it, so how do we actually do it? It's like you actually need someone to choreograph this. But then
Exactly.
But then with the choreography, do you worry that their movement might be slightly a bit too complicated then to animate, or is there ways to work around it?
I would say no. The animators are all phenomenal. There's very little that couldn't be animated. I can't think of an example where we'd be like, oh, that's too hard especially with movement.
Mhm.
And in terms of the movement, it's this when you're not a dancer, like a person who thinks physically like that, you don't realize how much thought and intention goes into every movement until you start trying to do it, and you realize what the hell am I doing? And so having someone like Krista come in and show us how things could be was just such a wonderful help. And her and her team came up with such wonderful character movements for both Mr. and Mrs. Twit that we hadn't even considered it.
Mm.
It was just lovely. Like that's the collaborative aspect of filmmaking that really excites me, is like you bring somebody on, and anybody from production staff all the way up to Phil, and everybody can have an idea that will enhance it, and you'll be like, of course, that's so wonderful, yes, and then it makes everything that much better. And that is always the most exciting thing.
Mhm.
When I see that, like see somebody who's good at what they do that thing. It's exciting stuff.
I think as well, like as you said, it sparks something in your mind as well, being like, actually, if they're going to be moving like that, then we might need to change this a little bit. But then also, as you said, we might not have thought about it, and that's in that sort of sense. And again, visual medium, so you guys will probably need something more of a visual thing to help you out. And it probably, that sort of change is probably like a really good creative thing. But I can imagine somebody down the pipeline being like, oh man, that's just cost me another 3 more extra weeks of like hard work.
Animation is the long game.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably somebody was like, yeah, we nailed it. It's like, no, they need to move to the right rather than the left. And then they're going to shimmy a little bit there. It's like, oh, okay. Oh, man.
I would, early in my career, I was in TV, or the first half of my career was in TV boarding, and I would sometimes get flack from animators complaining that I boarded something. It was so complicated, it was so hard to animate. And my thought was, that's your job.
Definitely been there. I started out as an animator, and I'd be like, but dang it, this is better.
Yeah, 100%. And I know that's always, I think we all like a moan about our job where it's like,
oh, totally.
It's going to be, but it's more just the funny aspect of it, right? Or how a work, and then thinking they've nailed it, to then be like, actually, need to go back to a couple of steps, and it's like, fine, okay. But then also, that's the world that you're building. What I would love to go back to as well is like the storyboard aspect of the film, because I guess when you're storyboarding, you kind of get an idea of how scenes can play out. And I guess with animation, every scene is probably storyboarded to an inch of its life, and probably maybe frame to frame to actually understand what happens on this big set piece. How we're going to do, for example, like the hot dog truck scene. And it's like, how we're going to do that. And it's like, how we're going to pick some shots for that, depicting what's going on here. Or even when they move the foster home as well, on that sort of scene.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really do that in real life with a building like that. But it's like, how can we make it really cool, but then also make it logistically potentially possible in that world? Do you guys first think about how we're going to storyboard it and then start communicating that down to the storyboard team? Or are there extensive meetings where you're literally going line by line of the script to say, look, this is how it's going to be looking like? If we do this scene with a couple of mid shots and then a couple of close-ups, can you knock up something of like how this scene could look like?
Largely, we had a really great storyboard team, so we trusted our board artists. Obviously, when we handed it out, we would discuss certain aspects of the scene, the the story and tension of the scene, the character, where the characters are emotionally in the scene, and largely what we wanted out of the scene. But one of the great things is letting your creative folks kind of have free reign to try a bunch of different things. You get just some lovely things coming out of that. But trusting your folks to just do the job they were hired to do. So yeah, we would have a lot of that stuff, but particularly at least in feature animation, in my experience, you are ahead of builds and design and layout. So you don't often, when you start a scene, have like locations to build off. You might have a painting of a street, and that's kind of all you have, and then the artist has to then imagine that in three-dimensional space and how the scene can play out within the space of that one single very rough painting that might not even be really approved in any way. It's just there for you to get a sense of what the city might be like more often than not. And so there's a lot of latitude for the artists to kind of do whatever they want. And then we would get together after they do a rough pass, and then that's when you start refining it and going, well, I think cutting in here would be a more impactful moment and that sort of thing. But the first pass, maybe even the first two passes, is largely up to the individual artists and letting them kind of do what they feel is best. And again, it all comes from just communicating well about what, as the creative leads, you want, or what we believe Phil would want for that particular scene and emotional beat. Is that too rambly? I do that sometimes.
No. It's, again, for me, it's not rambling because it's interesting. It's interesting because there's so much that goes into it, and it's also for me, I guess it's an itch that you're helping me scratch with the curiosity side of what goes into it. As you said as well, it's like you could have an idea where it's just the street, but then how do we play around with it and build up from it? And I don't know, I think it's just, again, it's probably a lot of, also you need to have a lot of imagination of like, this is how the street actually looks. Let's do X, Y, and Z, and then maybe the street will change in accordance to what we're doing in the scene, or it might change into something completely different. So we have to be a little bit more cautious about, cautious about if we do too much, because then you have to change it again, and it's going to overcomplicate the scene.
As we moved along further into production and sets were finished, that was something where we had to be more mindful of just the space, where you couldn't, when you think about like maybe the children's the orphanage bedroom area, it's like that's the space they are in. You can't really knock out a wall to add something else there. Like this is the space we have to act in. So that's something where they didn't always have to do this, but sometimes story artists would ask for the Blender files to be able to. There's a scene where Mary Mugglewump is swinging from the rafters, and Ori Tan, our board artist, went in and actually looked at the file to be able to move her properly. And then that was really helpful to animation. So it wasn't like she was swinging off of like things that didn't exist. It was very well constructed for that. And that was the scene that was storyboarded after that background was built. So that was something where it really helped to, again, like Todd was saying, the communication between everyone to like, what can we push, what can we still play with, and what's locked in that we need to be mindful of. And just knowing where things were in production was really key. So you didn't just make up a design for a new background character that didn't exist. It's like, okay, who's in our library that feels would fit this, and we'll use this character. But I mean, that was also cool too, because it helps, I think, sometimes just to have the parameters to work with. It's great to blue sky, but also, when you have like, this is the box you play in for the scene, sometimes that can just really be very helpful.
Do you have to think about continuity when you have people going back and forth, dealing with different scenes and how people are going to move? Because let's just say something, I don't know, a bit of a change on one thing, and then somebody goes into it and they're like, well, hang on a second, they were standing over here in this scene, and then they would have thrown out the window that way. So where would they land?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it just having like being able to have a bird's eye view of the film, as well as being able to hyper focus in on what needs focusing in on. But also we had a lot of smart people that could catch stuff that maybe we might have missed. But yeah, that was a big part, and especially when you're watching through edit. You know, the edit team, our editor Erica Dapkowitz is incredible, and she and her team would, you know, hey, she'd be able to spot stuff like that if maybe we missed it. But yeah, it's you know, especially as like in film sometimes, I think in animation especially too, it's like you want to be mindful of, you know, crossing the access stuff. I see sometimes in live action they can get away with, but something we'd be like, you want to make sure you can follow the character around the screen and not get lost between cuts. You know, being very mindful of that. And if a scene gets cut and suddenly something feels weird, it's just knowing. I think there might have been, I can't think of an exact example, but I think there might have been a couple times, Todd, where you might have noticed character screen direction was off a bit and wanting to tweak that, because that was something just you were able to quickly spot. But sometimes this happens if a scene's cut. You know, how do you stitch the two together and make sure they flow into each other still?
Yeah, and in the board process stage, you try to again and keep the communication open and have all the artists who might be working in the same area, or you know, sometimes sequences are separated but they're kind of strung together. So you would always pitch and talk with all the board artists present who are working on that in order to make sure everybody's again on the same page about where characters might be or what certain actions might happen that will affect later. Always keeping that communication open and flowing.
It's interesting about the whole continuity and how it's going to flow, and how everybody else has to sort of, you know, obviously you guys keep on top of it, but also how they need to keep an extra eye on it, because if something does move or if a file has changed and then might not be working on the wrong one, and how they need to sort of work around it. I think it feels like there's so much more going on, and how it's such a delicate tightrope for people to walk on what they're doing.
Very, very much so.
And
it's kind of what makes it fun though, is managing and helping figure all that stuff out.
It's like a big puzzle you're all solving together, and just like you're wanting to fit the pieces in.
yeah, I can imagine as well as like it could be like a Rubik's Cube. If something moves too much, how do I get back to that bit? If I have to move it here, what happens to the other side?
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's like, what happens here? What happens there? And then you're kind of just working towards getting it all to one side.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is super fun to manage and help work on together. That's the kind of stuff that's exciting. Problem solving with talented people who you like and get along with is kind of the best.
But I guess as well, if it's like in the nicest sense, it's like problem solving, but within like the warmth of your own office rather than on location where it's like could be raining or something like that, and you have to worry about that.
Yeah, thankfully we never have any weather delays or.
That must be quite refreshing though as well, knowing that you don't need to worry about, oh, it's raining today, so we can't shoot. But then you can't really blame the weather unless you get snowed in at home. But other than that, you know.
I guess for us it would just be internet outage or something. If someone had internet out, like, oh no, that's our weather going on.
Yeah.
Or like there's construction in my neighbor's house, and I remember sometimes trying to do scratch records and for the animatics, and there would always be a plane flying overhead anytime I tried to record my voice. So the little things.
Yeah, it's quite funny. But then imagine somebody does get that scratch and they're like, "Oh, what's going on here? Why is there a plane sound? What is going on?"
Exactly.
Like, this is not correct. But then that happy accident might actually work in the film, and somebody might actually realize that, like, oh yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
And what I'm curious to know about as well, is when it comes to the world building side of the film. I think it looks gorgeous. I think it really is nailed down in the way that it looks. Twitlandia is quite cool, and as ridiculous as it is, it does have that feeling as well of like, you would not pay me enough money to go on any of these rides.
Definitely not.
But then also the world outside of it as well. It has that certain sort of warmth feel to it. When it comes to something like this, are you, when there's changes in the scripts, or even when you're reading the scripts, do you start building the world in your mind and thinking, well, we want to distinguish between the two, but we want to make sure that one is a lot nicer than the other, whilst for where like the Twits live, for example, it feels very harsh, a lot of blue lights, and when you get to the city, it's a lot warmer. It feels a little bit, even though our characters are slightly lost, there's still some sort of remnants of home about the whole area. Do you think about these things when you're starting to build the world in your mind, and then how do you think about it and not going too far one way or the other?
Well, I want to give, this is where a great time to give Remy, Simon, and Fernando Piquet and their team all the flowers that they deserve, because this is hands down the most beautiful project I've ever worked on. I think it just looks fabulous. So tactile, so warm and dirty at the same time. And that is all their team. They do think about that stuff. As story artists, you do a little bit, but you're more focused on character performance and emotional beats than you really can be about in terms of color and stuff. You're thinking about that stuff, especially if you have the designs, like how something might fit together. But as I said earlier, a lot of times we were boarding ahead of design, but Remy and his team really made this world incredible. I just loved I loved going to every art meeting and seeing everything. It was hard to initially to not just fanboy about how beautiful every piece of art was, and start giving constructive feedback for me when I started, because everything was just so lovely. Like, and they would think about the warmth and colorfulness of the orphanage, for example, compared to the Twits, and but also keeping it, kind of shabby, because the kids are, they don't have a lot of money there, and but still trying to make it light and playful for them, in contrast to the Twits, where it's just garbage and TV blue light everywhere, and then also somehow making those environments appealing and beautiful in the weirdest, grossest, dirtiest way. Yeah, so props to our art team, because they knocked it out of the park.
Amazing. Yeah. And the TVs was a cool touch, because it was the thing with the Twits house was it was a house that didn't have windows, and so it was like, how are we going to get light in here? Well, what if they steal TVs? So that, like, that's where you get that very cold light in a lot of their spaces. But yeah, that was definitely something Phil from the very beginning wanted to find, just the beauty in the ugly, kind of rotten, kind of, which sounds like a big tall order, but like Remy, Fernando, and everyone just really knocked it out of the park. It was, like Todd said, just gorgeous to see how they built that all up.
Yeah, and it was based on Phil's communication again. Like, he used an example of, like, sort of the rainbowy colors in a oily, dirty patch of water on the ground as an example of sort of beauty in dirt and in filth. And that was such an evocative image for all of us that we were like, okay, I think we get what you're going for. And then, yeah, Remy and his team just ran with it and did amazing work.
That's actually a really good point about not the windows not being there. And it's like, how do we get light? And then we'll use the TVs. Yeah, that's gone on completely over my head. I didn't realize how clever that actually is.
Yeah, just very interesting kind of world building ideas. It was very fascinating just coming in and seeing everything they build.
Yeah, amazing, really. Quite, it's just so simple, but also very clever at the same time.
Yeah, real elegant solutions to stuff. It was great. It was great to watch and be a part of.
Yeah, amazing. It's just like it just completely went over my head as well. It makes me feel a bit silly now as well.
It was fun because Phil had decided that Mr. Twit was maybe a little bit of an inventor, but because of that, he would just, because he's cheap and Mr. Twit, he would just scrounge things, right? So it became obvious once you started thinking about it from that character side of things, like, oh yeah, of course, like, a lot of hoarders like hoard old TV sets they never use or fix, and maybe he fixes them up enough to just at least have the light going or something, So it was cool from that perspective, being able to take these ideas of character and implement them into the design aesthetic of the Twits house and see all of those things. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's good. Again, really, really clever, and it's quite funny as well. Just to think that these are the things that you will need to think about before you even start doing stuff. It's like, how are we going to see light? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? In terms of just even basic things of like lighting, and how are we going to. But then if they don't have any windows, it's like, yeah, let's use TVs. And it's like, yeah, and they could be really harsh light, and they can watch harsh things, and they're twits, and they're gonna do even harsh, just
Exactly.
just again, my mind's racing with ideas, and it's like the film's already out, so regardless of what my ideas are, but it's just like, oh, there's things I'm going to notice now and probably take on to what I would do as well. Just to wrap up this episode, what was your favorite scene to work on in the film?
Oh gosh, so hard to. Dang! Wow, why am I stumped? I think the thing that pops to mind for whatever reason, the very end when they're spitting the toad back and forth between each other, that was something that was it was a little bit of problem solving, where I think originally they went to kiss each other, and that was how they got the sweet toads in their mouth, because the toad dropped in. But I think there was a note where people, I think some of the test audience was a little uncomfortable with them being too romantic with each other. So we're like, what? Okay, well, how do we fix that? And just making it more like a reprise of the spaghetti scene was something that jumped into my head at the last minute. And that was, I think,
that solution was all Katie's. That was all Katie's. It was such a simple, elegant solution to an issue we were having problems with for ages. So props to Katie for that one.
Thank you. And that character was a crew favorite. Everyone, there's a couple people on our team that actually got tattoos of the toad as well, because that character was just so silly and fun. Yeah, that's the one that jumps to my mind. How about you, Todd?
Oh, mine's pretty easy, because it was my favorite sequence the whole way through, which is the bed elevator, which I boarded initially and then worked really closely with Todd to go through previs and that whole sequence. I kept having dreams of this movie being so popular that somehow this could be turned into a roller coaster or some sort of ride at an amusement park somewhere, because that's what it feels like when I watch that sequence. I love that sequence of them dropping and going through the house, and then the huge drop through down to the bottom. It's so fun, and having my own part in it, and then just loving that sequence as it is, easily my favorite in the movie.
But that amusement park would not be to code at all. It would be so dangerous. But fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. Coach mode, it'll be fine. Because you just have a bit of fun. Make sure people sign waivers, and it's fine.
Yes, all the waivers.
It's like what was it? Wasn't there like an amusement park in New York or something?
Action Park.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes. Yeah. We definitely watched some research about that when thinking about Twitlandia. And that is crazy that exists in real life.
See, yeah. Todd, we can do a soft launch of the action park with the Twits ride.
Let's do it. I'll start building it in our alley and see if we can get some folks here.
We'll just get a bit of screws, a bit of duct tape, and we're ready to go. Watch the cash come in. Katie, Todd, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thanks for having us. This is fun.
The Twits is streaming now on Netflix. Go out, see Katie's and Todd's and everybody else's beautiful work. Yeah, thank you again.
Oh, it was awesome to be here. Really appreciate you talking. I love talking about this movie. I think I can speak for everybody who worked on it, that we're all very proud of it.
Well, you're always going to be proud because you spent so much time on it. But yeah, there's also it's animation, it's Twits, it's Roald Dahl. What's there not to like?
Absolutely. Amazing crew. Shout out to everyone. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Twits.
What did you say?
Go Team Twits.
Go Team Twits.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Debatable. Thank you guys again. You take care and bye-bye now.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you so much.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.